Good morning to the members of the Pennsylvania Principals Association. I am Dr. Eric Eshbach, Assistant Executive Director with the association. With me today, as always, is Dr. Paul Healey, our Executive Director. We're coming to you today with some breaking news on information that has just come out from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and we wanted to get this information to you as quickly as possible. Please note, we are social distancing. It may look like we're together. We actually are not. We're using two separate cameras, obviously. Our offices are also in a somewhat hybrid approach, as you are dealing with in many of your schools. We do have office members coming in through a rotating schedule. Paul and I are coming in the morning. So if you need to reach out to us and ask a question, or you need some advice on something, please give us a call at the number that's listed on our website. Paul, talk a little bit about this breaking news and why we're doing this webinar today.
So we've been getting a lot of questions, Eric, in reference to assessments for the 2021 school year. We have written joint letters, single letters to both PDE, the governor, Washington, D.C. about asking to halt the assessments for 20 and 21 due to everything that's happened over the last year, that we felt that there is no good use of those assessments going forward. However, nothing has happened so far on the stage of assessments. However, I did have a conference call with PDE late Friday in reference to some new information about the assessments, not getting rid of them at this point in time, but offering a fall window. And you should see that letter that we posted on our website in reference to that information. We've also, as you and I were talking, Eric, about this, have come up with some questions that we felt that the field would be asking us. So we've anticipated some of those questions, and we want to try to answer some of those for you and clear up actually some misconceptions about assessments for 20 and 21 school year.
Sure. So I think the biggest question that I have heard from our members that have been circulated out there in Twitter and on Facebook is, why even assess? Good grief, this is a terrible environment for assessment for logistical purposes, for in regards to the instructional model that's being used. Why do we even have to assess?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one you're right that we've heard very, very often. But let me just clear that up. The state does not have the power to cancel the assessments for 20 and 21, right? So it's not PDE's fault at all, and it's not the local legislators' fault. I mean, they can talk about not using them for certain things through legislation, but they can't cancel the assessments because it's part of federal accountability with the ESSA, which is every student succeeds at. So the only people that can cancel that would be the federal government through a waiver for 2021.
So last year we didn't administer the PSSAs or the Keystones. Why is it different this year?
Well, there was a waiver last year, right? There was a waiver last year not to have that accountability. However, there at the present time, as we're talking right now, there is no federal waiver from the federal government to eliminate the administration of assessments this year. And I'll say it also appears unlikely that one is coming in the very near future. The reason being is the U.S. Department of Secretary of Education has not even been confirmed yet.
Right.
And even when Dr. Cardona is confirmed, it is not clear that they will approve an assessment waiver or invite states to submit assessment waivers. And ultimately, the granting of such a waiver takes time. It wouldn't be approved before maybe our window of assessments even is upon us in mid-April, I believe, for the PSSAs.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, we're hearing that the Secretary nominee Cardona is to be confirmed within the next 2 weeks. So let's say March 1st. If it takes 60 to 90 days to grant a waiver, we're way past the testing window, right?
Well, we're way past the testing window, but we also need information to the field from PDE and how do we administer these assessments? That train has left the track and everybody wants that guidance and information.
So we're hearing that there are some other states that have requested a waiver.
Yeah, there are some other states that have requested a waiver. Michigan, New York are in the queue for a waiver. People keep asking, why didn't Pennsylvania request a waiver right now? Well, the reason being that even if we request the waiver, we just would be in the queue for that. It may take 60 or 90 days. And as we just said, we're too close to our window right now. So requesting the waiver right now will not do us any good. We have to look at other solutions.
And as is usually the case during this pandemic, there are two sides to an issue. So not everybody is in agreement. Not everybody wants not everybody wants the U.S. Department of Education to issue waivers. Even as we've reached out to Senator Casey, who is on the Health, Education, and Labor Committee, we understand that he may not be amenable to granting a waiver. Why is there this difference of opinion, Paul?
Yeah, there are some groups out there and some individuals as well that still say that accountability should move forward. As we understand it, some of these groups are, especially in the special education arena, civil rights, and parent advocate groups that are saying, we want to prove that our students were harmed academically and in other ways during this entire pandemic. And the only way to do that is to have uniform accountability assessments across the country so that we can have that data moving forward. Another argument that's swirling around there, which I kind of find quite interesting, is that some members of Congress are pushing for the assessments as well to prove again, just like the parent groups and other advocacy group, that students were harmed during the pandemic in an effort to solidify their arguments for increased funding for education going down the road. That's an interesting argument.
Well,
As far as the Pennsylvania Principals Association goes, we find that we shouldn't be using children as political pawns. So certainly we're against that. But you can't dismiss that people have that argument.
sure, and it definitely is a respectable argument that they want to funnel more money to public education. We would argue it doesn't take an assessment this year to realize where the attention needs to be given. All you need to do is go back to historical data, and you'll find exactly where we need to put that money. So let's just say that Secretary Cardona is confirmed. He comes in, and the U.S. Department of Education says, "Okay, sure, we'll consider waivers." Is Pennsylvania ready to offer a waiver? Are they ready to apply for one?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends, right? Because what comes with the waiver comes some limitations and maybe some restrictions in a waiver. So before, my understanding would be that before Pennsylvania would actually get in the queue and apply for the waiver, they want to see what's in that waiver and what they would have to commit to as a part of the waiver. However, I will say, and we definitely support this as an organization, it does remain as a viable option for Pennsylvania going forward. And we support that if the federal government would allow states to apply for a waiver, that Pennsylvania should indeed apply for the waiver.
Yeah, sure. Now, Pennsylvania has submitted some letters to the U.S. Department of Education. What's that about? If it's not about waivers, what have they requested?
Yeah, so the breaking news out of PDE is this. They are basically, it's not a waiver, sending a letter to the U.S. Department of Education to actually alert them that they intend to extend their assessment window for 20 and 21. They believe through their lawyers and legal people looking into this, that they have the right then to determine the assessment windows.
Oh.
Therefore, they're saying that there would be still a spring window, but there's also going to be a fall assessment window, probably in September, mid to late September.
Wow, so a huge amount of questions now
Yeah.
that we anticipate. The first anticipated question that we would have is, so if a school is offering face-to-face instruction, will they have to give the assessment this spring?
Well, that was my first question out of the gate, Eric, in reference to, so what does that really mean that you could test in the fall? Does that mean if you were in face-to-face in the spring, the expectation would be you must test in the spring? The answer right now, as we understand it, is no. That districts will actually have the flexibility to decide whether to administer those assessments in the spring, possibly in the summer if kids are in during summer school, and then during this new fall assessment window, or any combination of the above.
Okay, so there's a lot of school districts in the capital region anyway that are offering face-to-face for elementary students and some type of a hybrid or a remote learning environment for their secondary students. Do they have to choose one or the other? I'm going to do a spring or I'm going to do a fall?
Yeah, again, I would say that as our understanding as of right now is that flexibility would still remain with the school district. So for example, as you just said, a lot of schools have their elementary kids coming in more than they have their middle school or high school kids coming in. So could they test their elementary kids in the spring and then hold off and not test middle school and high school till the fall? The answer to that right now is yes, we believe that schools and school districts will have that flexibility to decide within the testing windows when to administer those assessments at the various grade levels.
Yeah, so obviously keep your eye on the guidance from PDE, but that's our understanding right now is that they school districts would have that flexibility.
That is correct.
So does this guidance apply to all assessments, just some assessments?
Yeah, I mean, it applies to all the assessments for the accountability standpoint through ESSA, which for us is the Keystones and the PSSAs.
Okay. So the question comes up, what other assessments are there? Well, there's the NOCTI assessments, but that's not at this point part of the ESSA requirement, correct?
That's correct. And remember, there was legislation about that, about, not using those for certain things, before.
Right. So I guess another question that comes up is the fact that, again, why are we assessing at all? Because we're taking instructional time away from our students in a environment in which instructional time and students sitting in classrooms actually being taught is really important. I guess the question comes, why don't they just come up with an idea to shorten the test? Like maybe only, give them one day a week, or maybe only certain assessments. Why not shorten them instead of this crazy idea of extending the window?
Yeah, we heard this question last year, as well as we heard it again swirling around this year from our school districts and say, hey, okay, so if we have to test, we get it. Let's just shorten the time. Let's just shorten the test. However, that cannot be accomplished. And that's due to the fact that Pennsylvania only uses paper pencil exams. And these tests were prepared well into advance of any administration windows that are out there. And therefore, any delay to construct the new assessments would not align with the current timelines established in the ESSA accountability for 20 and 21. So that really cannot be accomplished.
Okay. So then it always comes back to how are these assessments going to be used? While I personally have concern because I don't think that these will be reliable or valid assessment, and I do understand the other side of the argument, but all of a sudden now we're going to take assessments that are given various timelines throughout the year, and we're going to use those to hold districts accountable. That just doesn't seem fair. So how will these assessments be used?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I certainly agree with you on everything you just said. However, there are some precautions with the assessments and some things that PTE has already done. They have submitted a letter and a waiver, so to speak, back in December to the U.S. Department of Education on this issue, stating that those assessments that will be given this year will not be used to identify any schools. You may recall that schools are identified either in comprehensive support and improvement or CSI,
Right.
or targeted support and improvement for TSI. Neither one of those designations would come out of the assessments for 2021. In addition to that, at the state level, it's already been determined, as it was for last school year, that any assessments would not be used for teacher and principal evaluations for the 2021 school year.
Okay, so I still have the question, how in the world do we give an assessment to students who are in a remote model? How do we give an assessment to students and adhere to the social distancing guidelines that the CDC has put out? It's the logistics, Paul. How in the world does the school do this?
Yeah, I wish I could answer that one, right? Because that would be huge for everyone if we could answer that. However, I will say that no matter when we give the assessments or why we give the assessments, we can't diminish the fact that we're still in a pandemic, right? And that we still need to be following both the CDC guidelines as well as our own state guidelines from the health department and PDE about social distancing, mask wearing, and all of those things. Now, we have requested and anticipate some further guidance on this issue from PDE. However, I think, going forward, that a school district will have to look at what could they do to do the assessments during the spring or the fall or the summer, and when is the best time for them to do that. So, for example, if most of their students are in remote learning or hybrid learning, they may decide that, hey, we can't social distance them, we can't get them all in, things like that. It may be better that hopefully as we get through the summer, that the start of the next school year, right, 21 and 22, we're going to be full-time face-to-face. It makes more sense to test then. That's going to be an individual school district decision based on your facilities, based on your staff, and based on what you attested to, right? Way back and when the pandemic started.
Yeah, I mean, we have members who are principals of cyber charter schools where they normally rent a facility to administer the test because there is not an online option for some of these assessments. And they're having trouble locating places that will allow them to come in and administer those assessments. We hear of members that are in traditional brick and mortar schools that simply are not large enough to be able to socially distance. There are guidelines that say the classroom teacher should not be the person administering the test. We all know how hard it is to get substitutes at this point in time, and the logistics behind this, we think, are the heavy lift, and we look forward to PDE providing us with some of that background. It's been great to have you, Paul, as a part of these conversations and getting this word directly from the Department of Education. So, any parting thoughts as we move forward?
Yeah, a few things. I would just say stay tuned, right?
Yeah.
Because things could change very rapidly. For example, maybe there will be a waiver. We still hope for that. We still support that, as we said, as an organization. And then if the state applies, will the waiver be granted? If that waiver is granted, then hopefully it would happen before any testing window, number one, right? And that may be another reason to hold off the assessment, waiting for a waiver. Instead of getting into spring testing. But that, like I said, that's going to be a local decision. We will continue as an organization pushing that. We will also, as an organization, continue to ask for, additional guidance from our state, from PDE, who have been a great partner in all of this, and then get that guidance out to you as soon as we can. And I would also say that we've anticipated some of your questions here in today's webinar, but there may be more that we didn't think about. And so what we would ask you to do is to send your questions after you read the letter from PDE that will be posted on our website. read the letter, find out what the implications are for your district for that letter. And if you have some additional questions, we ask that you send them to either Eric and I by email, and then we'll try to get answers to those questions directly from PDE. I will also say, that our responses in these questions are our beliefs and our thoughts right now. They do not express an official opinion from PDE, right? So we just want to make that very clear. This is not their guidance on this. This is our best thinking through the scenario as it exists in whatever the date is today, February, 21, 22.
Exactly. And I'll just end with this. Our president, Dr. Jonathan Ross, president of the Principals Association, put in one of his most recent articles the need to focus on students. There's a lot of focus right now on these assessments and what they may do. You as a member need to focus on your students. It's not time for those assemblies and those rah-rah times to get kids pumped up for the assessment. It's time to tell them to do their best job, to do what they do best, and that's come to school and learn from their teachers. And we certainly appreciate the work that you as principals in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania do for your students and your teachers every day. Stay tuned. We'll have more information as information comes out. And if you have questions, email Paul or I, and we will answer those questions. Thanks and have a good day.
Thank you.